You don't harm people and you don't harm society. That's orderly, and it includes, as they're defining it, privileges law recognized the common law. I wanted to give some examples in B, C, and D to see some things that were not privileges under common law, so would not be part of personal liberties according to that definition. One is abortion. And you can see in letter B that for Blackstone and for our legal tradition, really up to 1973, abortion was considered taking a human life, and so was not permitted, was not considered to be personal choice, because personal choice does not include taking another person's life. And in letter B, you can see that in our legal tradition, a fetus becomes a person as soon as that fetus can move in a mother's womb. You know, as soon as an infant is able to stir in the mother's womb. That's really after 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. There's movement, I think. I'm not a medical expert. You can double check that. But movement happens pretty early on. Not at conception, obviously, but after the first very few weeks, there is movement. So anything that takes the life of a fetus from that point on would be considered homicide or a very serious crime, very serious misdemeanor. So this was not a privilege, it was a crime, abortion, until 1973. Then, as we'll see, the Supreme Court expanded choice outward to include that action because, you know, in their opinion, it was not taking a human life up to the 3rd month. Letter C, homosexual sex here was seen as actually a kind of physical assault, and included in that would be sex with an animal. I don't fully understand everything they're saying here, except that it was considered a felony, and felonies were punishable by death. When Blackstone in letter B calls abortion a very heinous misdemeanor, he's not using misdemeanor in the sense of what we use it as a very casual crime like jaywalking. It means a crime whose punishment is not death. There's no death penalty for an abortion, but still it's a very serious crime. And letter C, homosexuality was seen as one of the felonious offenses, meaning it was punishable by death without benefit of clergy, which means that if you were a clergy person, you were not outside of the law and would be punished by the regular civil courts. And so it was not a privilege. It was not considered part of personal liberties. It was considered a crime. And this was true even to very recently in the state of Texas. Homosexual sex was not considered a part of personal liberties. The Supreme Court came in 2003 in a famous case called Lawrence versus Texas and said, no, you need to be able to engage in homosexual sex. It is a part of personal liberties. But there's some disagreement about that, and we'll look at that more as we go forward. Letter D has to do with people having children out of wedlock that they cannot support. There was a criminal penalty for that. Because you can see if you read it that they believe that you're putting too great a burden on others when you bring a child into the world that you can't support, and you're going to expect or ask other people to support them. So they want to discourage that for the good of society, so that you don't put too much of a strain on other people to support other people's children. Activity 18, so that was not a privilege recognized in common law or part of personal liberties. Activity 18 is a liberty analysis, and with personal liberties it's a little bit more complex, as I said, with some of the others. Letter A is Abington versus Shemp. This is the state of Pennsylvania made it a law that you had to, at the beginning of a public school day, read some verses from the Bible without comment. Now, you can really go either way here. You could say Abington Township, which is representing the law of the state, promotes personal liberties because it's actually good for society. In other words, government can make laws that are for the better working of society. If you think that hearing from the Bible every day is going to make for a better society where people are less harmful to others, don't engage in self-destructive behavior, etc., then you could say Abington. If you think that no, it's not really going to promote the good of society, that Bible reading this has to be an area where government stays out, then you could say shemp. It does apply, but you could go either way, and I would accept either position as long as you back it up and show you understand what personal liberties is. Letter B, Plyler versus Doe it does not apply. This meaning of liberty, personal liberties, does not apply to this case because it's not a freedom of choice case. The people are not asking government to stay out of their lives. Doe, which is the illegal immigrant family, is not saying to government, stay out of my life. It's come into my life and educate my children. So it just does, personal liberties does not apply to this case. Letter C, Roe v. Wade, it's a little complicated in the sense that, again, it's going to depend on if the fetus is a person or not, and I'm going to allow for disagreement on that point when you do your writing and thinking about the subject. If you think the fetus is a person, then Wade winning would promote personal liberties because freedom of choice does not include taking another person's life. If the fetus is not a person, then Roe winning would promote personal liberties unless you think that it's destructive of society when women have abortions. If it is, then it still would be Wade winning. But if abortion doesn't harm another person and if it doesn't harm society, then under our definition of personal liberties, Roe must be able to make that choice. Letter D, Brown versus Board of Education. This is the same as Plyler versus Doe in the sense of Brown is not asking government to stay out of his life. He's asking government to educate his children in desegregated schools. So personal liberties does not apply to this case. It's not a personal liberties case. So you're always going to be asking yourself, is there an issue of personal choice involved in the case? And the answer is no in Brown versus Board of Education. So I emphasize again, these liberty analysis questions don't have anything to do with which side you think should win. It's just looking at from the narrow perspective of personal liberties, which promotes that meaning of liberty. Okay, moving on to activity 19, a new meaning of liberty. Self-government living under laws made by our representatives in a legislature is the meaning of this meaning of liberty, is the definition of this meaning of liberty. You can see that in the First Continental Congress in 19A. This is a good definition that you could use in a paper. It has to do with being ruled by laws which we ourselves approve, not by edicts of men over whom we have no control. So the key is living under laws made by our representatives in the legislature. Same is true of letter B. Civil liberty is another word for self-government. It has to do with governed by laws made or assented to by the representatives of the people. So that's, again, the key here is that our laws are made by representatives. On the quiz, I'm going to ask something about self-government, about, does self-government require that we vote on all laws ourselves? It does not. The laws are voted on by our representatives in the legislature. Name of the state legislature is Legislature of the State of Texas. Name of our federal legislature is Congress. We have two legislatures acting in at least traditionally different areas, and we'll study that more when we get to constitutionally limited government.